So Dr. Mushtak, you're coming from India directly, from Delhi. You're teaching at the Jamia Millia Islamiyya. And you're going on with the Sufis, with in particular two early Persian authors. You will present us. And so with the use of the terms Salaf and Salaf is Salih or Ṣāliḥīn. Thank you very much.
Good noon, everyone. Respected organizers and respected audience, listeners, and I think there are some students also, my brothers and sisters. I will try to speak without mask. It is not mask, actually it is my scarf. Actually I have some problem in my teeth recently after Eid. So I feel very difficulty speaking without this one, but I will try to use to remove it and speak without it. So I'm sorry for this disturbance. I am from Delhi, New Delhi, Jamia Millia Islamiyya, a central university. And this university was founded 100 years back. And I am teaching Islamic studies there. And my interest lies in Sufism. Even my PhD was about Hazrat Sheikh Junaid Baghdadi and early Sufi literature, development of early Sufi literature. In this paper, I will discuss about the use of Salaf and how they pursue the concept of Salaf, the early Persian Sufi writers, especially Central Asian and South Asian writers. And I choose here only two writers. One is Kashful Mahjoob, the writer of Kashful Mahjoob, Sheikh Ali Abul Hasan Ali Al-Hujwari, and second is Sheikh al-Islam Abdullah Ansari Hirawi. Eventually both are from Afghanistan. One is from Herat and second is from Ghazna. And the second spent his whole life in India, in Lahore. The first one was Sheikh al-Islam Abdullah Ansari was in Herat and he buried there. My paper is approximately 22 pages and it is not possible to read out all the paper. So I will study here my focus area. This study aims to briefly examine how the term self is used in Kashful Mahjoob of Hujwari and Tabqatus Sufiya of Sheikh al-Islam Abdullah Ansari. What meaning are intended by it and how the idea of the way of Salaf, Mazhabu Salaf, is understood and conveyed in these works. Kashful Mahjoob is an extremely important work on Sufism. It is considered the first formal and synthetic book of Sufism in the Persian language. Notably, it is also held the distinction of being the first major work on Islam and Sufism in Indian subcontinent. The author, Sheikh Abul Hasan Ali Al-Hujwari, who passed away in 1077, was born in Ghazna, presently in Afghanistan, and spent a major part of his life in Lahore. He was also close disciple of Imam Abul Hasan al-Qushayri, Sahib Kashful Mahjoob, and follows an approach similar to that of the teaching of Ar-Risalatul Qushayriya. Though Kashful Mahjoob has a distinct feature, it includes a detailed discussion on the various Sufi orders, Turuq, Silsilatul Sufiya, which was the first formal documentation of such lineage. He devoted an entire chapter about it. The Sufi order mentioned in this chapter are, for the most part, no longer exist today. However, Their inclusion indicate the formation of Sufi order had already begun during this period. The methodology of Kashful Mahjoob place supreme importance. I'm sorry, I'm feeling some problems. Supreme importance after the Quran and Sunnah on the Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu. Sheikh al-Hujwari even assert that the Safa and Sidq, the purity and truthfulness that Sufi lay claim to find their most perfect model in Abu Bakr as-Siddiq himself. Following him, he accorded importance to other three caliphs, Umar, Usman and Ali, then to the first 6 Imam of Ahl Bayt, to Jafar as-Sadiq radiyallahu anhu, then Ashabu Suffa, followed by Tabi'een, the Atba'i Tabi'een, Aimai Mujtahideen, and then the later Sufi masters. From among these present the lives and exemplary state of selected individuals focusing on their inner purification and sincerity and intention, devotion to zikr and prayers and act of honoring fellow Muslims. Notably, he dedicated a detailed discussion to the life and qualities of Zunnun Misri also. In Sufism, the imitation, iqtida, and the imitation of forebearers, yani Salaf, and their companion and their complete fellows, ittiba, hold immense significance. The people of Tasawwuf are particularly devoted to adhere to their predecessors in the Aslaf and Sheikh, spiritual guide, and the founder of their respective Sufi orders. This approach is marked by the great reverence and loyalty compared to others. In Kashful Mahjoob, Sheikh Abul Hasan Ali Hujwari used the term Salaf precisely in this sense. The forebearers are necessarily worthy of emulation. Through his work, Sheikh al-Hujwari emphasized the necessity of following the forebears and accepting their saying without rejection. From the time of companion up to his own contemporaries, he consistently referred to these figures collectively as the Aslaf or Ṣāliḥīn. However, it is noteworthy that the specific term Salaf appears only few times across the entire book. The first major usage occur in contrast to the ulama Zahir. Sheikh al-Hujwari writes, quote, for this reason, for this reason, some group have come to believe that Tasawwuf is merely a method that aids an observation to the inner self and outer rectification. It is one opinion. Other think that Sufism and Sufis are meaningless entities, mere names without reality. Indeed, some reject the even certain scholars of outward sciences, yani ulama Zahir, have entirely rejected Tasawwuf despite being veiled in deep layers and heedlessness and blindness, remaining content with their narrow and superficial inquiry. The common people follow them blindly, and as a result, they remove from their heart even the desire for inner purification. In doing so, the ulama Zahir have abandoned the way of the Salaf and noble companions. Unquote. After this quotation, Sheikh Hujwari quoted an Arabic couplet, Inna Safa Sifatu Siddiq. Inna in Aratta Sufiyan Alat Tahqiq. Yani that means indeed purity. Yani Safa is the attribute of a Siddiq, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. If you truly seek to find Sufi in the real sense, then know that the sense of the Sufism was fully embodied on him. In another point, Sheikh Hujweri uses the term Sahaba and Salaf both in context of explaining the true nature of Tasawwuf. He mentioned that a great Sufi, Abul Hasan Qoshanji, once said, quotation, initially Tasawwuf was a reality without name, but now it become a name without reality. Quote ended. Explaining this statement, Al-Hujwari writes that during the time of Sahaba and Salaf, the term Tasawwuf was not in use. However, the reality of Sufism was fully present within every individual. That is, the Sahaba and Salaf, the term of their spiritual statement and practical conduct embodied the true essence of Sufism according to Sheikh Al-Hujwari. In another word, Sheikh Al-Hujwari compares the Salaf with later generations. He reported that someone asked Hamdoun al-Qassar, the founder of Malamatiya, it is quotation, the word of Salaf had great impact, but why do the word of people of our time lack influence? Quote ended. Hamdoun replied, the Salaf spoke for the honor of Islam, the salvation of their own soul, and to earn the pleasure of Allah. Whereas we speak seeking worldly gain and assert our reputation as eloquent speaker. Thus our words are deprived of the true impact. That was the explanation by Sheikh Al-Hujwari. A famous Sufi, Abu Usman Khiri, is also mentioned by Sheikh Al-Hujwari. He described him as Imam among the Salaf, Muqaddamus Salaf, and finest successor among his own predecessors. Persian quotation hai, as-Salaf khud khalaf. In this way, he merged the qualities of both Salaf and Khalaf, successor and predecessor, in a single personality, suggesting that every individual is, in a sense, both a Salaf and Khalaf, depending on their place in the chain of tradition. Generally, Sheikh Al-Hujwari consistently used the term Salaf without any qualifier. However, in one instance, he employed the phrase as-Salafus Salih in a detailed chapter discussing about Sima, listening to music or recitation melodiously. He writes, quotation, quote, a group of sheikhs have declared it dislike, makruh, to listen to and recite poems, odes, and even Quranic verses in a musical manner. They avoided it themselves and prohibited others from engaging in it. Among them was a group that, in following the Salaf, deemed musical and singing unlawful, haram, and collected evidence supporting in its prohibition. Kashful Mahjub, unquote, page number 590. Sheikh Al-Hujwari devoted an extensive discussion to Sama. At one point, he explicitly recorded that the doctrine of Salaf was to consider Sama involving musical instrument as forbidden. He supports this view with the statement of the Salaf indicating that since the regarded such Sama as impermissible, later generations following their path also viewed it as forbidden. Thus, it is clear that Sheikh Al-Hujwari, though the sphere of influence of Salaf and Aslaf is very wide, in summary, his concept his concept of the Salaf can be outlined as follows. The Sahaba, particularly the Khulafa Arba'a, four rightly guided caliphs, the Ashabus Suffa, followed by the Aima Ahl Bayt, then Aima Mujtahideen, then Tabi'een, Tabi'een, and all those who followed their path considered the Salaf and Salaf Salih. Their actions are binding proof, hujjah, for later generations, and their opinion can be used to determine ruling on matters where there is no explicit text or conclusive judgment, such as in the case of Sama, where Sheikh Hujweri himself adopted precisely this method. Second, although Sheikh Abul Hasan Ali Hujweri include all individuals from the Sahaba down to his own time within the category of the Salaf, he never used the term Salaf in isolation. When referring to the earlier generations, instead he often couples it with the term of Sahaba wa Salaf, the companion and the predecessor. This suggests that in his view, the rank of the Sahaba is significantly higher than that of the predecessors. While the Sahaba are indeed Salaf, the term Salaf alone seems too narrow to fully capture their unique status according to Hujweri. Thus, whenever he mentions the Salaf, he marks a point to specifically mention the Sahaba and distinct and developed and devoted group. Distinct and elevated group. Turning now to Shaykh al-Islam Abdullah Ansari, who authored works in both Arabic and Persian. His Arabic treatise Manazilus Ṣāliḥīn hold a central place in the Sufi literature and on the stations of the spiritual path. The later scholars such as Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi and many others wrote extensive commentaries on it. In Persian, his renowned work is Tabqatus Sufiya, which he modeled after Abu Abdurrahman Sulami's Tabqatus Sufiya. In this book, Shaykh al-Islam Ansari divided the Sufis into 6 generations. The first generation began with the figure like Abu Hashim as-Sufi and Zunnun Misri, and the 6th generation concluded with Ali ibn Ahmad al-Hanzali. In Tabqatus Sufiya, Shaykh al-Islam al-Ansari restricted his discussion to the imams and spiritual forebearers of the Sufi path. Starting from after the generation of the Sahaba and Tabi'een. Although the Sufi themselves regard all the Sahaba and Tabi'een as their predecessor, Salaf, and spiritual exemplars, but authors on Sufi biographical works generally began their accounts with the figures from the generation after the Tabi'un or sometime after Tabi'un. While general Sufi literature highlight the model and example of the Sahaba and Tabi'een and called for the adherence of their ways, the biographical work, Tazkirat, the Sufi typically do not directly document the lives of Sahaba and Tabi'een. Instead, they commence with personalities from the 2nd Islamic century. This indicates that Sufi biographical writers assigned the Sahaba and Tabi'een an exalted and untouchable status as the primary Salaf and only began recording the lives of those who become specifically known under the name of Tasawwuf after them. In Tabqatus Sufiya, the term Salaf is mentioned many times. In the account of Hamdun ibn Ahmad, it is stated that he said, quote, "Whoever studied the life of Salaf will realize the deficiencies within himself and see how far he lagged behind those great personalities." Unquote. Through this brief remark, it indicated that the action of the Salaf represented the desired standard, and that their lives and teachings serve as the yardstick against the one should measure one's own deeds. However, Tabaqat Sufiya does not provide an explicit definition of who the Salaf are. Shaykhul Islam Abdullah Ansari's other work, Kashful Asrar wa Uddatul Abrar, which is essentially a Quranic exegesis in Persian language, discuss the concept of Salaf in detail. In this work, he attempts to define the meaning of Salaf, identify its meanings, its reference to a certain extent, and clarify the status of Salaf within the framework of Sharia and Islam. For instance, while discussing Bid'at Hasana and Bid'ah Sayya, he writes, quotation, "Bid'ah Sayya Bid'ah Sayya is when merely speculations of theologians, mutakallimun, philosophers and astrologers concerning the essence of the attributes of God and God are propagated, while the Sahaba, Salaf Ṣāliḥīn and the teaching of the Quran and Sunnah are neglected." This is a small quotation. At another point, he addressed the question of where following of Salaf constitute mere taqleed or it is ittiba. Taqleed means blind imitation, ittiba means adherence with understanding. He writes, this is a long quote, he writes, quotation, "However, the reference to the Imams of the Salaf, such as Imam Ahmad, Imam Awza'i and others from that group, does not constitute mere taqleed, blind following. Rather, it signifies the representation of the Salaf adherence to the Quran and Sunnah, as well as the warning against injustice and innovation, bid'ah and zulm. Anyone who follows the Salaf's understanding and interpretation of Quran and Sunnah should not be accused of taqleed, for taqleed implies the acceptance of a statement without evidence, whereas in this case acceptance is grounded in evidence. Indeed, following a pious predecessor implies following him, just as the follower in the second row of prayer is considered to be following the Imam, not directly, but by the following the row in front of him. Yet it is still regarded as following the Imam. In the same manner, adherence to the Imams of the Salaf constitute following the Quran and Sunnah. The Sahaba witnessed and accepted it directly, and thereafter the lay and common people heard and accepted it. Thus it became evident that this is similar to following Salaf, and that such acceptance is based on evidence rather than mere imitations. In this regard, Imam Shafi'i stated, it is Imam Shafi'i's quotation, but it is not very much relevant to it. So the quotation is, I end here. These few examples from early Persian writings have been cited here to demonstrate how early Sufi authors in the Persian work use the term Salaf and Aslaf, how they situated adherence to them with the general teachings of the faith, and how they derived guidance on non-explicit matters based on their sayings and actions while placing deep trust in their understanding and explicitly stated matters. In fact, these early Persian sources contained even more significant information on the subject, and it is entirely possible through further study to examine how these texts, which remain influential across Central Asia and South Asia for centuries, contributed in shaping a particular type of Muslim consciousness and training their thoughts. Thank you very much.